speculation and rumours as well.
Yogita Lamai there. Well, let's cross live now to Kabul. I'm joined by Obidullah Bahir, a lecturer at the American University of Afghanistan. Obidullah Bahir, you, of course, like us, are hearing the news of this lightning offensive by the Taliban taking cities across the country. Is it your feeling now that they will be moving on Kabul and there may well be very soon a fight for Kabul?
Thank you for having me, Stephen. This is quite disheartening. We feel quite disheartened because in a few days we went from talking about how we could help the IDPs to actually talking about where we could extract our families to. The idea is all our assessments went out the window. People were considering that the government would put up some resistance. That hasn't happened. Now the Taliban are logically going to choke out Kabul. And the international community really has to decide, and the Afghan political elite have to decide as to what happens next. If the only option on the table for the Taliban is to push into Kabul, we are going to see blood spilled in amounts we haven't seen before in recent history. So the international community and the Afghan elites really need to give options to the Taliban for a more peaceful transition of power and save some lives.
What do you think your students are feeling right now, particularly the women? We've heard from Kandahar and other cities of women being grabbed from offices, being told they have to go home, being forced at gunpoint to do so. What's going to happen, do you think, to women students at your university?
Well, my students are quite worried. We had since yesterday on our WhatsApp group for the students, since classes are online, and most of them were worried what the future would hold. The university is trying to find ways to get them to safety or continue in a way that could happen in Afghanistan. Again, there is some sliver with regards to how the Taliban leadership treated Ismail Khan, who was a warlord fighting against them. This makes us hope that the Taliban somehow have a different approach.
Well, that's Obidullah Bahir there talking to me from Kabul. I'm sorry to say, for the moment, we seem to have lost the line. We will, of course, get back to him if we possibly can. We do want to hear voices from Afghanistan as this Taliban offensive continues. Well, just a few minutes ago, I was talking to Obidullah Bahir, an academic at Kabul University, about the rapidly changing situation in Afghanistan as the Taliban offensive takes more provincial cities, and there is speculation about the future of Kabul itself. Let's go back now to Dr. Bahir. Dr. Bahir, we need to talk about the Taliban. How different, or maybe not different, do you think the Taliban is today from the group that we saw in power in Afghanistan more than 2 decades ago?
Stephen, sorry for getting disconnected. It's rumored that fiber optics have been hit and the internet companies cannot provide the same speeds that they did before. With regards to the Taliban, there is sort of an incongruence between what the leadership has been saying and what has been happening on the ground. We've seen the ground fighters implement strict rules with regards to how they view the future society of Afghanistan, whereas the leadership has said that they're open to women participating within the society. We saw that in the case of Ismail Khan, who was a warlord who surrendered to the Taliban. The leadership did treat him well, which gives some level of hope that if the leadership does have authority, they will have an improved vision with regards to Afghanistan compared to them in the 90s. All options are on the table. It's just that we're in the realm of the unknown. It's very hard surviving day to day, not knowing what the future would bring or what the Taliban have in store for Afghanistan. So that's our reality.
Yeah, and your experience is interesting. Your grandfather was a famous warlord and fighter. Your father was involved in fighting the Americans. Your grandfather had taken on the Soviets. People now are talking about all-out civil war right across Afghanistan. Is that what we are now looking at, do you think?
That's one outcome. I've been trying to reach out to a lot of Afghan elites today as well, trying to encourage them to go to the president and implore him for a peaceful transition of power. The other end would be convincing the Taliban of how important it is for their legitimacy and their recognition by the international community that a peaceful transition of power happens and Kabul does not see fighting. Unfortunately, the ball is in the Taliban court, and they have to make a decision as to how they want to come to power. I hope it's not based on an assessment of how people develop atomic weapons, where when a nation starts, they know that it will have ramifications, but the moment you have the bomb, people appease you. And what if the Taliban are considering that? What if they're saying that the end will justify the means as soon as they capture Kabul? But I'm hoping that these elites can take a stand and approach the Taliban and the government to see eye to eye and talk about a peaceful transition of power. Kabul has the biggest concentration of civilians in the country, and it is a closed-off city surrounded by walls. It has seen a bloody civil war before. We do not want it to see another one. There wouldn't be anything left to rule for the Taliban if that actually happens. So here's to hoping that they become rational actors. At least their leadership sees a rational way out of this current situation.
Are you feeling fear right now?
The idea is people around you at the sort of panic that is overwhelming everyone has its effect on you. I am hoping that being here and speaking the voice of reason and criticizing the wrongs of every side should mean that I was not a party to it all. The fact that I am on a network at a time when it is dangerous to speak to the media means that I am trying to not give this bandwidth up for people who are partial, people who are providing misinformation. I'm trying to speak for my students. I'm trying to speak for the common Afghan person. And the last thing they want is to have to flee their country. Turkey has a trending Twitter handle that says, "Keep the Afghans out." No one wants to leave their country. We all were happy here, and we would happily stay. I left a life abroad to serve this country, and hopefully I'll continue doing it no matter who is at the top of the political structure.
And just a quick thought about the Americans, the British, and the other Western and NATO forces who were in Afghanistan for 2 decades and of course have made the decision to leave, which appears to have prompted this Taliban offensive. What do you think are the thoughts of many ordinary Afghans today when Joe Biden, just in recent days, has said he has no regrets about the decision the Americans have made?
Biden gave himself an easy way out where he decided he wanted to talk about happier things and not discuss Afghanistan. He said they weren't here to nation build, despite all the contrary statements by their representatives. He said that they were here to fight Al-Qaeda and kill bin Laden. All of that happened on the backs of Afghans who laid down their lives for this project to be realized, and the West deserted us. And the desertion does not mean that we needed their troops. Their troops could have left a long time ago. It's just that there could have been a more responsible way to go about it. Tony Blair's own words were, "We will not give up on you. We will not walk away from you," as a nation to the Afghan people in 2001. And that's exactly what they did. Not only did they walk away, but they put this government in such a difficult situation. They gave the Taliban legitimacy. They gave their forces momentum. And then, of course, the Afghan government is to blame as well. They had no strategy. They mismanaged this war into a defeat. And even now, it's really up to their pride and ego as to whether they can realize that the fighting is done and no more people should lay their lives down for a lost cause. And we should find the outcome that causes the least amount of suffering and least amount of lives lost.
Obaidullah Bahir, we thank you very much indeed for joining us from Kabul.